This is my heater. I dare you to hit it.
He'll be sorry.
Want the heater? I'll give it to you.
Basketball, maybe they don't hit it.
A swing and a drive to deep right.
Clear the deck. Cannonball coming.
Left field. It is out of here.
What up? What's good? Baseball Unstitched. We are back. A lot of energy to start the pod today, that's for sure. Bunch of good stuff. Starting off a new segment we think you guys are going to like, and we're going to start every week now with what we're calling This Week in Baseball. What's wrong with you?
You didn't even ask me how my weekend was.
Because I was running them down, and then I was going to ask how your weekend was. We're going to leave that in there, too. We'll ask about how his weekend is later.
We don't care.
Rocking and rolling. After that, we're moving over to Seth Lugo and his extension, and then a deep dive into majority of the trades that have happened. But obviously, he's got a lot of energy, and he's really excited to be here today. Flax, how was the weekend?
Weekend was good. Best part of it, you hit your second home run of the season of your adult life.
I did.
You know, we're going to get to a point where you're going to hit so many, we're no longer going to talk about the fact that they're all happening in your adult life. But for now, when we can count them on one hand, we're still going to count that. But otherwise, it was good. We locked up first place in our division of our men's league going into the playoffs. You and I both threw 4 innings. We played well. So I hit another ball off the top of the fence. That's the third one this year. Still can't get it out, but that's a me problem. It's not a you problem.
Swing looks good over there, Flex. Don't change anything. Yeah, really good on the mound for everybody. Overall, totally agree. Good weekend. Ready to get back into the thick of the baseball conversation, of course. And as we were joking and alluded to, really excited for this. Flex, what happened this week in baseball?
Oh, boy. Well, first of all, it was a big Monday. Just Monday in and of itself. Started the day with a report that Rob Manfred was in the Phillies locker room trying to talk about salary caps with the players. Not really sure. He came out later today and said, I misjudged how good of a relationship I thought I had with some players. If a boss comes in and talks to you and says, hey, by the way, we're just going to not let you make as much money as you've always made, you could be best friends with the guy. You're still going to be pissed off. That's people's livelihoods. So Bryce Harper basically turned around, used some expletives, and said, if you're going to sit here and talk about that, get out of our locker room. We don't need you in here. I tweeted this. This was his destiny. When we called him the chosen one at 15 years old, it was this. It was this moment where he was going to fight for the players this deep into his career that we knew this was the Bryce Harper that we needed.
I love this too. As somebody who watched Bryce Harper grow up in the league as a Nationals fan and tried to express to everybody that all he was a hard-nosed player and you not liking him was this crazy thought process for me.
Yep.
This is what I was getting at. He's always been this type of guy to fight for his teammates and fight for the people around him. You're just now getting to see the fact that no matter how you felt about him over the years, these are the types of things he puts his foot down on. So, I don't know, watch more of his TikTok in the offseason. He loves baking now. It's sick.
Content, us and him. We're all over it. The other thing that happened today, Emmanuel Clase got put on leave with pay for being named in gambling, a gambling issue similar to his teammate. I don't really know what to make of this. I'm very much of the headspace that we let due process play out on this podcast before casting stones. Until they tell me and show me unequivocal data that Emmanuel Clase was a part of gambling on his own ability to do something poorly and making lots of money off of it. Well, I don't care how much money he made off of it. Changing the outcome of the game purposefully to make any money or make someone money. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Emmanuel Clase did this, did that, did something wrong. But either way, he's in this position now where he is on leave because he was named in investigation on this fact. It brings up a lot of conversation around gambling, right? The problem here that a lot of people have is that gambling can be addictive. And we rarely ever talk or tweet about gambling because we don't really want to enter that space. We do it on our own here and there. Never a lot of money, more just to kind of make things a little more interesting or just a little bit of fun. but we're also not in a position to affect what's happening around us. So we have every right to do that. What I don't understand is, the MLB takes this hard stand, and at the same time, they'll turn around and during this Speedway series on national TV, every other commercial break is going to have a DraftKings commercial. Almost guaranteed. Every regional broadcast, half the regional broadcasts are brought to you by the FanDuel Sports Network, right? Like that's the issue here, is that we're trying to have our cake and eat it too. And I'm not really sure where you go from here, but I'm definitely not in the camp that we should get rid of legal gambling, because chances are if we didn't have legal gambling, this stuff would still be going on. We wouldn't have a way to police it.
And I guess, again, it comes back to outcomes, right? The reason why everything that happened to Pete Rose happened was because people blamed it on outcomes of games, right? The bigger situation here is that it's fine that the MLB wants to make sure its players aren't gambling from an outcome perspective, but it doesn't mean that there's not some level of perpetuation of the problem. Biggest thing for people to know here, too, is where they're apparently pointing Clase to is that the first pitch of ninth innings, he has like a 15% higher rate of throwing balls on the first pitch of the ninth inning compared to every other pitch. I think it's around 5%. So the jump is big enough for them to look into it. I think we could go into this topic for a while. At the end of the day, there is a little bit of exactly what you said, having your cake and eating it too. So either way, tell us what's going on in Wrigley.
Yeah, Jed Hoyer got his extensions. For those who don't know, Jed Hoyer is the GM of the Chicago Cubs. We've been talking about it a lot this offseason. During the season, he made the big trade for Kyle Tucker. And it was really unique, all the moves he was making, because it lived in this world and in this headspace of like, Jed Hoyer's on an expiring contract. He's trying to win a World Series right now. So he's going to make a lot of moves. He's going to move guys around. He's going to maybe overpay for some players that have shorter windows on the team to try and win a World Series right now. He's not as focused on trying to get extensions signed with younger guys. All these things that you would traditionally see a GM do throughout the offseason and into the season. And him getting his extension right now, right before the trade deadline, changes a lot. Because now, how stingy he is with his prospects that he's now going to have to work around within his farm system for the next couple of years, or however long this extension is, now matters to him. It maybe didn't matter as much to him in the offseason or the beginning of the season before this got done. So that's going on in Wrigley. I'm curious to see how that shakes out. We'll know in a week's time, but I know the Cubs are heavy on back-end bullpen arms, potentially a left-handed starter. There was the conversation brought up whether or not they were going to be too left-handed heavy with Imanaga and Boyd. But the likelihood is I think they don't care much about that. If the guy throws strikes and gets outs, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I expect a high level of aggressiveness for the Cubs over the next 4 days. Well, 3 days now, I guess. It's time of recording, basically. But stingy or not with the prospects, they have one of the best farm systems in all of baseball. Oh, yeah. They're currently coveting 6 top 100 prospects, one of them graduating this year already, so it would have been 7 had he not. The Hoyer situation, the most interesting part for me is what you and I talked about as, hey, we're in this situation now, and you kind of need to extend me if you want me to go out and make these types of moves that need to be made. It's just a very different situation than what we expected to happen after assuming he was not coming back early on in the offseason with all the reports. So I'm excited to see what the Cubs do.
Even a week ago when we put out the Eugenio Suarez trade with the Cubs, it was like, listen, if you're going to move on from anybody, it's got to be the guy who plays his spot. If Hoyer's looking to win now, moving him for Matt Shaw, who at the time wasn't playing well, which, by the way, Matt Shaw's gone nuclear since we put that tweet out 2 weeks ago. Love it. Good for him. But those are the types of things that go out the window, right? Suarez should not be on their radar anymore, given how they're trying to build for the postseason. But go for it. You got something else?
All I was going to say is the one place I'd expect them to be a little more active than people are thinking would be rotation arms. Keep in mind, Steele's out for the year. Yep. I think if they could get one more guy who is around a 2 to a 3, don't be surprised if they go after it. Again, this is a team that is truly now, with everything that they've done, including the extension of their GM, they're looking to win this year. So expect them to be, again, even more aggressive than initially thought.
If you live under a rock and or don't watch baseball but listen to our podcast, first of all, thank you. Second of all, Nick Kurtz had the greatest offensive performance of all time, and that is unequivocal. He tied Sean Green for the most total bases in a single game, which is 19. He hit 4 home runs, a double, and a single. Went 6 for 6. He had, how many RBIs did he have? I think he had like 5 or 6 RBIs. He eclipsed Sean Green's RBI total by 1. I do know that.
He made everybody look. He made it look like he was the one hitting against men's league pitching. Is what he did.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I was affectionately told by Wake Forest fans on Twitter, it is not the Big Amish, it is Nicky Nukes. And I'll tell you what, nickname earned. Because when you're his age and you're hitting 24 bombs in what is a shortened time on the field because he didn't come up till April, comparatively to other guys who got a little bit more time in the sun, it's phenomenal what he's doing. I said it last week on the podcast. Nicholas J. Kurtz is electric to watch in the batter's box. He followed up the next night by going 2 for 4 with a walk and 2 singles, and then finally got the day off on a day game. But they swept the Astros in 4. Now, flipping to a couple of teams that are also playing hot baseball, and it's important because they're streaking at the right time and in a division that's open. Mets, 7 in a row. Big for them. Rangers, 6 in a row, 9-1 in their last 10. Huge for the Rangers considering the Astros have something like 18 guys on the IL. The Mariners are floating. They're not playing poorly, but they're not playing the way the Rangers are playing. This is the Rangers team from 2 years ago that still has a lot of pieces in that lineup that they had a couple of years ago. They've got a really, really good starting staff when those guys get going. I mean, Nathan Eovaldi is maybe is probably the least talked about really good right-handed arm that is pitching right now in baseball. And it's only because he's not qualified, because he's had a stint at the beginning of the season where he was injured. As soon as he got going, he has been nonstop, lights out.
When you look at that roster top to bottom, it is a group that can absolutely rake, and it got a staff that, when healthy, is as good and really as anybody's in baseball. DeGrom has come back this year very obviously and looks like he's in Cy Young form. Kudos to you, Flax, for saying that might be happening. The other piece that I would remind people is we talk about, again, I say it so much, you're probably all sick of it, regressing towards the mean. They didn't hit well in the first half, most of the roster. It doesn't make them bad hitters. It just means they weren't in the quote-unquote flow state that they needed to be hitting at the highest level here. So expect them to be much improved in the second half offensively. Expect them to stay hot. I said the Mariners could be the ones who dethrone the Astros. The Rangers are going to try to make me eat those words, and it might not be the M's after all.
Yeah. I got 3 more things. I'm going to run through them really quickly. First of all, Hall of Fame inductions were this week. Congratulations to Dave Parker, the late great Dave Parker, CC Sabathia, Billy Wagner, Ichiro, and Dick Allen. All went into the Hall of Fame. Very nice speeches from all, including Dave Parker's son, who read an incredible poem from Dave Parker himself. The man was a treasure, and it's a shame that he didn't get to read that himself. Ichiro was exactly as we'd expect Ichiro to be. I think my favorite thing was, I think he said something to the effect of, if I didn't play baseball, you'd look at me and think, God, that guy's a dumbass. And I think that that's phenomenal, right? Like, I think that just perfectly explains the disconnect between how well he carried himself as a professional and who he actually was as a person. And I say that with the utmost respect, because I think sometimes we have a hard time disassociating the player from the person. And I think it really showed that there are 2 different guys when it comes to that. And he was the greatest example you could potentially have of that type of differentiation. Second to last thing I have, Aaron Judge to the IL, 10-day with elbow issues, flexor, forearm strain. Likelihood is he's on the IL for 10 days, DHs for 10 days, sees how it is. But this is a tricky spot for the Yankees because they have one Giancarlo Stanton who, when healthy, is actually a very solid right fielder. But at this point in his career, doesn't strike me as the guy who's going to be putting up the same defensive runs saved numbers as he once did. Sure, he's still got a fine arm, except elbows, but for the most part, it's a weird situation. You want both of them in the lineup at all points in time, but if Judge is going to have to be full-time DH, it ain't going to be Stanton.
Yeah, they're going to need some help out there, and this is where people keep asking the question about a top prospect that's hanging out down there in AAA in Spencer Jones. Don't be surprised if the Yankees stay active as they already have this deadline with 2 acquisitions in Ryan McMahon and Ahmed Rosario, both that we'll talk about a little bit later here in the podcast. Before we pop off of This Week in Baseball, I do want to say that this Hall of Fame class had some of the better nicknames to go into the Hall. Yeah. Dave the Cobra Parker, Billy the Kid Wagner, and Dick Allen. You ready for this? The Wampum Walloper. I mean, you keep that's sick, dude. I want you to call
so many different directions. I'm glad that's the direction it went. Awesome. So either way, again, as Flag said, congratulations to the Hall of Fame class. A lot of things going down this week. Make sure to tune in next week again to hear what happened in baseball. But let's get to topic number 1 of the day. And you and I were pleasantly surprised to see this come in. Because everybody's been talking about where the Kansas City Royals are going to trade Seth Lugo. And the Kansas City Royals said, let me buy a Randall Grichuk and let me sign Seth Lugo for the next 2 years. Lugo signing a 2-year, $46 million extension with the Kansas City Royals. I love this. This is them putting their foot down and saying, stop treating us like bottom feeders because we're going to make this happen. Yeah, I was a big fan of it. Listen, it's still a wide open AL. I don't think this means they're going for it this year. I think it just means that they understand where they're at, and they're not really in a position where Seth Lugo is going to net the return that's going to turn around and benefit them in the next 2 years. And I think they're in a window where it's got to be that short of a swing because you want to start getting going. You want to start moving in that direction. You've got guys like Maikel Garcia playing at career levels. You obviously have Bobby Witt Jr., you've got Vinny Pasquantino. You have guys who are on the right trajectory, and you've got pitchers in Chris Bubich, who just went down for the rest of the season, shoulder injury. Cole Reagans, similar deal. Noah Cameron. If you can turn around next year and have those 3 guys healthy, ready to go, and Lugo regresses to your 4 or even your 3, absolutely worthwhile. So we talked about this a lot. There's kind of a standard pay for a veteran pitcher. It's around $15 million a year. I think he probably would have fetched something similar in the offseason next year, maybe a little bit higher because he's earned it. I like that the Royals said, we can either trade you or you can stick around and keep doing this thing for us, and here's the money. Now, I think when you sit down and look at that conversation at the point that Seth Lugo's at in his career, and this is where he really revitalized it, why would he want to go somewhere else if he has an opportunity to say, yeah, I want to stay here?
Just remember, he wants to start, right? Kansas City is the one who truly gave him the opportunity to go out and be a starting pitcher, and he went out, and for all intents and purposes, he lit the world on fire last year as this being his, second full year of being in a rotation. I mean, he looked really, really good. The big thing that's fun for me about Lugo is this. When you look, for all of you analytical heads, you would look at Seth Lugo's Savant page, whatever you may want to look at to get all of his chase and whiff and K rates, and you would say, man, this guy seems pretty average. But then you look at his production metrics, and he's got a 2.95 ERA, 99 strikeouts, and a 1.09 whip, right? And really what I see with Lugo is simple. Dude knows how to pitch. There's no other way to put this. For anybody who doesn't know, Seth Lugo has thrown 9 different pitches this year. He's thrown 9 different pitches this year. His primary pitch is a curveball, okay, that he's thrown 23% of the time. This dude has as big of an arsenal as you can have. He can use every single pitch effectively. And at the end of the day, regardless of what the quote-unquote analytics say, he's going to beat you because of his ability to mix and command the baseball. No other way to put it. I mean, I love this too. He's 35 this year, be 37 by the end of the contract. You're talking about a young Royals team to begin with. What better guy to have out there helping all of these potentially young arms that could come up through your organization over the next couple of years. Plus, to boot all of this, we're going to keep talking about it and reminding all of you, the pitching class this offseason looks really solid from a starting perspective. We had one of the biggest droughts I've seen in a long time of solid, 1 to 4 type starting pitchers in the 2025 offseason. The 2026 offseason is chock full of guys who could move up and down that list. I think the Royals could be another team that gets aggressive in that type of area. So I love this move because it tells me that they're not folding to the thought process that they need to be moving guys. They're sticking to their plan and they're going to get it.
I think also, we talk about this all the time, right? You want to put yourself in the shoes of a GM who's trying to make these decisions, and how you understand your people and how you understand what makes these decisions is really important, because it isn't always about the baseball. Sometimes it's about family, right? You're talking about Seth Lugo, who's got 2 young boys that are at an age that's pretty formative living in Kansas City. So he staves off having to figure out a living situation away from family for the last 2.5 months of the season. Then it staves off having to go into free agency and fight the whole offseason to figure out where he's going to end up landing, and then pick his family up and move. It turns things over into a situation where it's like, you know what? We've settled here. They know he's settled here, and they're doing right by him by paying him, $23 million a year for the next 2 years?
We talked about it. Alex Cobb, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, all guys who made $15 million this offseason. That's a great deal for him. At the end of the day, at 35, that's a great deal.
A year, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? It breaks down to what if he had gotten a 3-year, $15 million deal when it's all said and done in some respect, right? Like, I just think when you look at family and like how excited his wife was when she was tweeting about his extension and everything, like you can tell this meant a lot to the family, and that this was not a hard decision for him when the opportunity arose where they said, we could just extend you and we could end this conversation now and shut down all the trade talks and you can just go out and keep doing your thing. So I love this move all around, both on the family side of it, but also on the baseball side of it for the Royals and the direction they're moving as an organization. I mean, Vinny tweeted about it almost immediately, very excited about it too, right? Like you could just tell like there's a good clubhouse culture there, and they've had some shaky waters this year as far as just a little bit of anemia with the offense, but I do believe this is a team that you're going to see contend and do a little bit more next year and really for the next 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely. I think the Royals are on a much better trajectory than maybe many would see. Again, the AL Central has this age-old thing where everybody forgets it exists. Let's not do that because they've got some good teams. I do want to correct myself too. Lugo got his chance after being a bullpen arm for 5 years with San Diego on a 1-year deal and then went to Kansas City. That's on me. Either way.
We don't have Jackson this week, so it's a good thing you're correcting yourself.
Oh, I was correcting myself just in case Jackson came around, because then he can't put me on the board. You know, I'm trying to get better at this.
Jackson's on vacation this week. We're not going to do that to him.
Moving into what's going to be the topic of discussion for the next week, and that would be the MLB trade deadline. As of recording, we are less than 4 days away, and there's already been a lot that's happened. Now, the big names necessarily, or who people have considered the big names, not any of them necessarily off. I think the largest name that has come off the board at this point, in my personal opinion, would be Josh Naylor, who we're going to talk about first here. But there have been quite a few moves, and quite a few moves that are going to help some teams potentially make their runs to the playoffs here. Let's start there. Josh Naylor, from the Diamondbacks to the Mariners. The Seattle Mariners traded Brandon Garcia, who was a left-handed pitcher, their number 13 overall prospect, and Ashton Izzy, a right-handed pitcher who was their number 16 overall prospect. Flex, where do you start with this? And I'm assuming it's the fact that Naylor's bat's going to add some thump to that Mariners lineup.
Yeah, and it already has, right? He's already getting himself on base. The biggest thing, and we talked about this during our live show, he doesn't strike out a lot. right? This is a team that needs to continue putting the ball in play, continue giving themselves a chance. We saw in the postseason last year. If you put the ball in play, teams are counting on you to get yourself out. So if you make them make a play, there's a high likelihood that something throughout the course of 9 innings of a game will happen to benefit you as the offensive team.
Isn't it concerning that we have to remind people that putting the ball in play makes things happen, though, at this age in baseball? Isn't that crazy?
It drives me nuts. I mean, you and I had a whole conversation about this the other day. Like, it almost feels like at the major league level they don't teach fundamentals as far as, like, defensive fundamentals go. And it strikes me as confusing. But that, outside of things, when it comes to Naylor, and I look at what he brings to the table, a 348 WOBA, to me, screams an above-average player who's going to give your offense even more of a chance to get going. It's a guy that adds more protection for your better hitters in the lineup. It's a guy who you can't pitch around because he's not going to swing out of the zone. And he's a guy who's going to get on base and make things difficult for pitchers to throw to better hitters later in games. He's going to get things moving. He's going to be a part of the commotion. And so I'm really excited about that for the Mariners and Josh Naylor, but I think I'm just as excited for the Diamondbacks here, right? Because this is the kicker for them to get going into what could be one of the best trade deadlines they could have for the next 5 to 6 years of their organization, considering the young talent they still have contractual ownership of, and the guys that they can move that are playing at a high enough level to bring back some acquired talent.
Yeah, they got a lot in this deal, and the other thing people need to remember is there was a lot of questions on why are the Mariners giving up, even though he's a rental, a guy like Josh Naylor for 2 prospects outside of the top 10 of any organization. The Seattle Mariners, by a lot of different cases, have the number 1 organization in all of baseball when it comes to their minor league talent. The other piece, too, here is the Diamondbacks have been very clear about what they want at this deadline. And Flax, you and I have talked about this. We talked about this with Jackson. They have clearly stated that they're looking for arms. Like, this is not a mystery. This is not, oh, we're going to get this to get that. They want arms. So what did they do? They went to one of the pitching factories in all of Major League Baseball that needed a bat, and they said, let's get it done, right? They come away with Brandon Garcia, again, left-handed pitcher, 6'4", 235. He was 11th round pick out of Texas A&M, 25 years old, comes out of a low 3/4 slot. His 4-seam fastball is topping at 100. He's sitting around 96 to 98, and it plays like a turbo sinker. What did they get with a guy like this? Oh, that's upside to your bullpen if he's not an arm that stays in your rotation, right, in general. And he's already started to move to the bullpen because of the fact that he has that type of arm, right? He runs out there with a upper 80s cut fastball that actually plays more like a baby slider, a sweeper that's around the mid 80s that has around a 15.4 IHB, and a changeup that they're still trying to develop. He's been very solid between AA and AAA this year in 33.1 innings, a 3.51 ERA, and an 11.34 Ks per 9. Love grabbing Garcia. He's a little bit older, so you know he's a guy that's going to go affect their bullpen or the back end of their rotation quickly. Again, expecting that to be a bullpen with the turbo sinker that he's basically throwing already. And then you look at a guy like Ashton Izzy, right-handed pitcher. Again, good size, 6'3", 165. He was a 4th-round pick in 2022. Out of Illinois, he was a prep right-hander. Fun note on him, he was actually teammates with Noah Schultz, the number 1 prospect for the White Sox in high school. Yep. Izzy's still 21 years old, throwing a 4-seam fastball that sits around 94, topping at 97. He's throwing a 2-seamer that is more sinkerish than anything else, that sits just below that in the low 90s. A sweeper in the low 80s that could be a plus pitch and gets a ton of whiffs already. And of course, again, another guy developing a changeup. Izzy has been in the rotation this year when he's been in the minors most of the time. 47.1 innings, a 5.51 ERA, a 10.27 Ks per 9. Biggest question with him is he is currently averaging over a home run per 9 innings. But you're talking about young talent. And obviously, you've seen a lot of the guys, Flax, that the Diamondbacks have signed recently. It's a lot of young arms. So they are also very confident in their ability to develop pitchers
Well, that's what I was gonna say, right? Like you go get a Merrill Kelly out of the KBO a while back. You grab a Zach Gallen, Ryan Nelson, Brandon Pfaadt. You have a bunch of guys that you have grown into the type of pitcher you want them to be that have been fairly successful in the big leagues on your rotation. It doesn't shock me that they feel comfortable to say to everybody, throw us your pitchers. We know what we want to do with them. We know what we want to turn them into, and we know what success looks like. They've done it with starters, and they've done it with relief pitchers. Look at what they did with Shelby Miller, right? I mean, they rose him from the grave out of the bullpen. You got guys like Justin Martinez, right? Like, they have guys and they find guys that fit in different spots within their organization. But why would you want to go look for anything else when you've got Alec Thomas, Jake McCarthy, Corbin Carroll, probably got Lourdes Gurriel Jr. for another year because he'll probably pick up his player option is my guess. You've got Ketel Marte, Gerardo Perdomo. You've still got Pavin Smith, Jordan Lawler. The amount of bats these guys have are absurd, and those aren't the only ones, right? Like they've got a bunch in the minor leagues that are still ready to work their way up. You've got guys like Tim Tawa who can play across the entire field. Them going and asking everyone for pitchers is the right move. I like the two guys that they got a lot.
By MLB.com, 8 of their top 10 prospects are position players at the current moment.
Yep.
And, of course, got to shout him out because he's got the best name in baseball. Lou James Groover is friggin' coming. Dude's a freight train, 294, 373, 438. But we are not here to talk about their farm system. The trade looks pretty good for both sides. Feels like, because of how good the Mariners organization is, it actually might be a little bit of an overpay, but I think the Mariners get out of this what they need. I think the Diamondbacks start their trade deadline really strong with this. Let's move on to one that's one of your and I's favorite, and I'll say it the only way that I can, and that's the fact that Ryan McYankee was always inevitable. It was always going to happen.
And I think you just said this, and I think it's a great transition into this trade. The idea of an overpay. The idea of an overpay is always going to seem realistic when you're giving away multiple arms, and especially multiple high prospect arms for a bat. And a bat that isn't like proven superstar 35 bombs bat, but like pretty good bat. But it's going to feel a lot different than what these guys get traded for at the end of this week. It's going to feel a lot less like an overpay by the time we get to the end of the week. And I think that's why these moves were made when they were made. Because I think that both of these GMs, I think Cashman and Dipoto both understood what they were giving up was going to be worthwhile by the time the week ended, and they could just get it done now and get going in the direction they wanted them to go, their teams to go in. Well, I didn't know what I was trying to say there.
You're good. I mean, I think the thought process of an overpay is simple. It's an overpay at the time, but you cannot dictate what is an overpay at the MLB trade deadline until the deadline is complete. I think that's the biggest thing we want to make sure people understand is a lot of things will feel like an overpay in the moment. But if you go out and get a guy earlier than when there is a bidding war, or you go get the number 2 third baseman, in this case, before the number 1 gets traded, you have to give up a little bit more because that team is ready to sit there and wait and be part of the bidding war unless you blow them away. And in this case, I think the Rockies got a ton for Ryan McMahon. Like, I think this is a great move for them. The biggest hope for us is something we'll talk about when we get to the 2 prospects. McMahon has been a little bit up and down this year, but for what it's worth, he's kind of actually just been the guy we've always known him to be. Okay, good with the pop, great defender at third base. He has a very interesting 315 WOBA, which makes him a slightly above average hitter, but he has an 88 WRC plus, which makes him a slightly below average player. I think this is just fun because at 4.0 AA for the Yankees at third base, going to get the ground ball pitchers that they got this offseason, this made so much sense. And McMahon is going to feast, right? with the long ball in a smaller park. He might not hit 250, but guess what? He's already hit 16 home runs. If he gets to 30 this year, I'm not going to be surprised with this change.
I think if he gets to 22 to 25, ends
You're
up
happy.
Ends up hitting 220 to 230 and plays a Gold Glove defense at third base, you're getting more than what you deserve to get. Plus, he's not gone at the end of this year, right? You still owe him money for another year. I think maybe even another 2 years. I said this on our live stream. It's like got a scary trajectory that parallels DJ LeMahieu. But again, like when you look at what he's done, he's been a 92 WRC plus guy, OPS plus guy for pretty much his entire career. Even though his numbers seem a little bit down right now, it's pretty much what he's been this year. I think with the right guys on base in front of him, he's going to get some more hits to fall. I think the way Yankee Stadium plays a little bit differently, he's going to get some more balls that fly out of the park. I just think defensively that was the right move, regardless of how he hits. Stick him in the 9 hole, let him hit however he hits, and play Gold Glove defense at third base. You're giving too many baseball games away by not fielding and throwing the ball cleanly enough. They did it again today.
Before we move into these two prospects, let's also point out the fact, and we talked about this with guys like Gavin Sheets, not the focal point of a lineup anymore. And that means he's going to get more pitches to hit. And I know everybody's like, oh, it's the major league level. Oh, they know how to pitch everybody. If you don't think he's going to get more pitches to hit in the 9 hole than he did in the 3 hole, come on, guys. Like, let's stop and think about that. So I do expect him to move more towards what we've seen from him in the past, even though the pop's been there. Won't surprise me when his average jumps 20 points before the end of the year.
I think his at-bats are just going to get better. Like, I think some people... Obviously, playing in Yankee Stadium and playing in New York is difficult, but I think that not being the guy somewhere where your team is struggling makes you press on your at-bats more than a fan base in a new place could make. Like, I think there is a weight off his shoulders.
I don't disagree with you. So either way, I know you and I both like the move for the Yankees to go grab McMahon. It's been 3 years in the making. I mean, we've literally talked about this for three straight deadlines. Let's talk a little
bit about what the Yankees finally gave up for him.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going next. Griffin Herring, their number 8 overall prospect in the Yankees organization, moving to the Rockies. Herring is such an interesting situation here because he flew up the boards this year because he has had a fantastic 2025 season in A-ball and high A-ball. A 1.71 ERA over 89.1 innings, 16 total starts, a 2.91 FIP, 10.28 Ks per 9. This kid's not allowing home runs, a 0.3 home runs per 9. Ball does not hit the barrel often when Herring is on the hill. He's a 22-year-old, 6'2 left-hander who was drafted in the 6th round out of LSU and was part of that 2023 national championship team. So he's a guy knows how to win. He's boasting a 4-seam fastball that says 90 to 92, topping at 94, a slider in the mid-80s that is very sweepy, and a changeup in the mid-80s with solid depth. I love this arm pickup, Flex. I know you enjoyed what you saw out of him once you had a little bit more time to take a look.
Yeah, it feels like the kind of guy that throws a lot of stuff with a lot of depth, and I think that's maybe what's been missing in Colorado. They kind of have fallen into the trap of the rest of baseball, which is high ride, high spin rate, high IVB on fastballs, and everything else needs to spin off of it. And I think the difficulty is when you play in a place with altitude, IVB doesn't work as well. It's generally lower, which means your ball's not riding as much, which means it's not as hard for hitters to choose the right pitches to swing at, take advantage of it, and put better swings on the ball. What I like about this lefty who doesn't necessarily throw as hard is he stays off of barrels because everything is depthy. He throws a sweeper, he throws a changeup with depth, he throws a fastball that isn't necessarily going to blow anybody away. But when you have command over it and you can work things that work downhill and down in the zone, you can get a lot of soft contact and you can just keep the ball out of the air. In Coors Field, if you just keep the ball out of the air, you're going to be successful. right? Think about what Ubaldo Jimenez used to do so well when he was pitching there at his best. He threw sinkers. He threw balls that dove downwards. He forced the ball into the ground. He also had incredible command of his fastball and had a really nasty breaking ball. But I think that's what you can see from a guy like a Griffin Herring, who can take more of the pitcher's mentality than the thrower's mentality. I'm hoping that this is a shift away from the traditional move. Now, I say that, and the other guy they got, the number 21 prospect in the Yankee system, 6'4", 200 pounds, 11th round pick out of ECU, tops out at 98, good ride fastball, mid-80s slider, pretty much a prototypical hard-throwing right-handed pitcher. I don't know what to think here other than, like, I like his stuff. I like the pitcher. He really uses a lot of the fading and sinking stuff against lefties. I'd like to see him learn how to maybe use some of that more primarily and work the ball both ways and not necessarily need to use 95 to 98, just because I think the likelihood is he could probably develop into a guy that works the ball into the ground, not a guy that needs to blow the ball by people and strike people out. You know how I
think the
feel
biggest thing that they saw with Graz is simply a high floor relief pitcher at worst. I think that's what they loved about this, is they felt like they were getting a major league arm as a second piece in this deal regardless. The only thing I want to leave us on with this is back to your point. I really am hoping that this is the Herring acquisition was the Rockies stopping and saying, we have to figure out what works in altitude because we have to play here 82 games a year. And that sounds like such a simple statement, but it's not something they've done. I love Dolander. Dolander's stuff is not built to keep the ball on the ground, right? They do have to find a way to shift to what is going to work in altitude. And you're right, Flax. Pitching downhill, throwing balls with heavy downward movement, and we're not talking about the glove side movement spinners. We are talking about arm side runs, sinking type pitches, changeups, fastballs, and splitters. I'd love to see them give more of that an opportunity and prove that it doesn't work in altitude and then hit the drawing board again. Because what they're doing every day is not working.
Well, look who they've got as their closer right now, Seth Halverson. And I love Seth Halverson's stuff. That is a plus fastball when he locates it. But he also works it off a splitter. Right? A splitter is a pitch that can work at altitude because it's not relying on needing to ride at some level of height in the zone. It's a pitch that's actually trying to do the opposite. It's trying to spin less, it's trying to hit resistance less, and then it wants to dive off the table. Right? Like, that's the type of guys that they need to start going for, or just really weird arm angle guys like the Human Glitch.
Jimmy Herget!
Right? Like, that's kind of how you have to build a staff, is around guys who just kind of do things a little different. That's why I'm a huge fan of the Griffin Herring grab. I'm interested to see how Josh Gross goes and how they shift his arsenal, or if they shift his arsenal, or if it becomes successful.
It's going to be fun. I think that was a really solid move. I think the Rockies definitely right now, we would say that the Yankees quote-unquote overpaid. Again, it's another thing. Within 4 days, we're not going to say that in my opinion. Yep. Moving on to the first big back-end arm or high-leverage reliever to move this trade deadline. The Baltimore Orioles traded Gregory Soto to the Mets for Wellington Arsena and Cameron Foster. Arsena was the number 19 prospect of the Mets organization, a right-handed starter and reliever, as he's done both, and Cameron Foster is a right-handed pitcher. Flax, you got to watch Soto all year long. He has a very interesting results mix, is the way I want to put it.
Yeah, it's the wildest thing. If it's low leverage or medium leverage, he will walk a ton of guys, and he will give up hits, he will give up home runs, and he will give up runs. If it is a high leverage situation, he will dominate. It is the most fascinating thing I've ever seen. This year alone, he's pitched in 10 high leverage innings. About a third of his innings have been high leverage. 194 WOBA, 152 batting average against, 11 strikeouts, no home runs. It is a much different pitcher. And this is what the Mets needed, right? If you look at what guys have done other than Edwin Diaz, what guys have done this year with Reed Garrett and Ryan Stanek, they walk way too many guys in high leverage situations, and then they give up a bleeder here and there, and they've given up a couple of runs late in a game. They needed a guy in a good left-handed arm that could shut down high leverage situations. And they brought him in against the Giants in his first outing. They had just gotten 2 runs to take the lead. They bring him in the 7th, and he goes 3 up, 3 down with a strikeout against Elliot Ramos.
He is Mr. Mano y Mano. That's the best way for me to put this.
Yep.
Soto elevates his game when given the opportunity to face the best of the other side. He needs that extra level of intensity, and he comes out and he performs.
Yep.
Again, like you said, coming from the left side, high leverage guy, I think it's exactly what the Mets needed. And listen, they gave up a solid arm in Wellington Arcena, and I think as an Orioles fan, you're probably really excited to see this kid, 6'3", 180 pounds. He's still only 20 years old and was signed out of the Dominican Republic in 2023. Flax, this arsenal is pretty solid, man. 4-seam fastball sitting 96 to 99, topping at 101. And the only knock is it's relatively straight, something I'm sure the Baltimore organization was aware of. But hey, topping at 101, that's an arm. He does throw a cut fastball that is considered actually his best pitch in his arsenal, sitting 92 to 94 with some very sharp break and running upwards of 6 inches glove side. A curveball in the mid-80s, which is a lower end spinner for him at this point, as the spin rate's not as good as major league averages. A slider with heavy depth, sitting around the upper 80s and gets great whiffs. And then finally, a changeup 92 to 95. It's not used a ton for probably the same reason we are wondering why Yainer Cano is throwing his changeup so much. But we'll see what the Orioles do there.
I think this is one of those arsenals that when you see it with your eyeballs and then you look up and say, what pitch was that? You'll be like, really? It's one of those arsenals where like you see a cutter and you'll be like, that was a firm slider, and it wasn't. It was a cutter. And then you see a slider and you're like, that was a sweeper, and you're like, nope, that's a slider. Like his stuff just kind of zips a little bit, and it is classified obviously the way it's classified because of spin axis and rotation and velo and all these other things that matter. But that's what I like most about it, is that it's a little bit unique, but it's very full. It's a lot that you can work with, and I've said this about a lot of college guys, and I think he's in a similar age range. If a guy that age already throws that hard and has the propensity to spin the baseball, there's a lot you can try to find the right mix. There's a lot you can do to try and spin it differently and see what it comes out as. And I love that they have that opportunity, and I love that they got that guy. The other guy, Cam Foster, unranked 26-year-old, we talked about this, felt more like a guy who could potentially get MLB innings in a relatively shorter time frame. I liked the extra piece add-on there. The likelihood is if he's in the Mets system and what they do with pitchers, they liked something about him. It's one of those teams similar to the Mariners where if they're willing to give up arms, you may want to think twice about who you're grabbing, just because you really want to make sure you're getting the right guys, because they do have a good finger on the pulse of who they like and who they think they can do things with. So I'm excited about Foster, but with the age and everything, it's either going to be a quick turnaround of usage for him, or it will be a throw-in piece that may not pan out. We'll see. But that's often how these things go, and I think for what Gregory Soto has left on his contract and what I think the Mets needed and what he's worth, this was the right return.
Yeah, little Brian Baker action potentially with Cameron Foster if things go the right way. Throws from a very high slot, 6'5", large dude, has played well between AA and AAA this year. Excellent additional piece for the Orioles that could get, again, help eat major league innings right now and prove worth very quickly at the highest level.
And then trade him in 3 years for a SoundCloud rapper?
Hey, man. Lil Slay, kids. Lil Slay. Go listen to him, Slater, DeBurn. What's up? All right. Moving on here. Ahmed Rosario to the Yankees. They needed a utility guy. They got a utility guy, good right-handed bat. playing for my Washington Nationals this year. Like what the Yankees get here, their bench has been I don't know, kids like to say it, pure mid. How about that? That's where I'm going with the Yankees bench. 47 games for the Nats this year, slashing 270, 310, 426, 5 home runs, a 14% K rate, a 4% walk rate. Again, one of those guys who just goes up there and swings the bat. No other way to put it. His expected statistics are better than what he's put up. But for what it's worth, Rosario has had a solid season with inconsistent plate appearances for the Nationals, being their top utility man this year. Another great grab for the Yankees, who I think are going to continue to be aggressive at this deadline.
Yeah, fascinating to say the least. When you look at Rosario, he can play a lot of different positions. It's good to continue to go get defenders, even though his defensive metrics aren't what they once were. The one thing I thought was interesting was he hits lefties extremely well, right? He's, I think, rocking a 126 WRC plus, a 350 WOBA against lefties right now. I think he's batting 299 against them. 3 of his 5 home runs come against them. I would have thought this may be correlated to the Yankees aren't hitting lefties well. The Yankees have the highest OPS against left-handed pitching. The Yankees have one of the highest averages. They've hit some of the most home runs. They don't struggle against lefties. This was a shocking move just from the standpoint of if you're going to get a utility man, getting one that doesn't have a lot of time left on his contract and one who defensively is not putting up the best metrics of his career at this point didn't make a ton of sense to me. And it felt like they gave up a lot to do that.
I just think that the Yankees look at things very simply this year, and that's the fact that they did what they were supposed to with McMahon, and they shored up the defense, and they got a decent bat. And now what are they doing? They're just adding more solid bats to the bench, and you always need a dude on your bench who can rake against lefties. The other thing is, again, they did go out and get Ryan McMahon. Rosario has played a ton of third base over the last X amount of years. So having a guy who can spell McMahon against lefties if you want it, awesome. Having a guy who can play third, short, second, and has even at times in his career played corner outfield, this is huge for them, for me. I do like the move.
I think second base is what's even more important, because when you think about this whole process, if Judge can't come back and play defense, Spencer Jones still deals with back spasms, or as you get deeper in the season, you want guys who have kind of been there, done that for a little bit longer, and Stanton is not your guy who can play right, Jazz Chisholm can play the outfield well. Not just play it. He can play a good outfield. It's not crazy to think that you slot Rosario in at second base and shift Jazz to the outfield. It's very clear that Jazz has not been a phenomenal second baseman or third baseman. There is a point at which if you get deeper into the season and you want somebody who's a little bit more short-handed at their position, or you want a guy who's got a little bit more range in the outfield, it's not going to be Stanton and right, and it's probably not going to be Jazz at second. Now, it is the Yankees, it is Aaron Boone, and they do like to hold firm with their heels in the sand for a very long time. But I start thinking about these things, and it's if there is a place he fits in, it makes sense that it coincides with the Aaron Judge injury kind of coming to fruition. But we'll see how long that keeps him out or what that actually ends up being, because it may be all for naught.
It's going to be really interesting to see. Again, we've stressed it with the Cubs. I've stressed it multiple times with the Yankees. This is a team that is going to continue to be aggressive at the deadline. I see 1 or 2 more moves for them before the Thursday deadline occurs. The Nats, I think, got a real good one here to start this in Clayton Beeter, former competitive balance B-round pick of the Dodgers. Again, here we are talking about Dodgers arms. He's 26 years old and has been consistently in the bullpen for the last 2 years. But Beeter, he boasts a very electric fastball that sits 94 to 97 and can touch 99. And his slider is just wicked. It is a gyro-type slider that has depth to it and is so difficult to hit. The Nats are looking at a guy that already has major league innings this year. I think that the goal in the game plan is simple, and that's they went out and got a guy who can help bolster this bullpen for what might be a Nats team that thinks they can do a little bit more than people believe in 2026. I like this move for them. And then Braum Martinez, talk about somebody to just dream on. I mean, I love this. We're talking about an 18-year-old who signed out of the Dominican Republic. He's only played in the Dominican Summer League, but in his short stint of 18 games, 404, 507, 632.
The kicker.
The kicker, he stands 5'10", 161. Listen, this is a guy that you can just dream on as a fan, and his name's Braum Martinez. I love it. I'm all about this.
I think you traded for another style version of like a Jose Altuve.
You know how great
he's
it
gonna
would be?
walk in the. Oh yeah, you'd love that. But he's like, he walks in the room, and you're like, that guy plays baseball, and then you see him hit, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's crazy.
I wish I was 5'10". Let's not knock him too much here. That's just what it is. Moving right along while I remind everybody that I'm only 5'9". The one that came across the wire today, and the last one we're going to deep dive into here, the Rays moving Danny Jansen to the Brewers in a 3-way deal. The Brewers receive Danny Jansen. The Rays receive I'm gonna botch this one. Jadher Arenamo? Oh boy, I totally got that wrong.
That sounded pretty close.
He's the number one. He's the number 21 ranked.
So
That's
the
know.
right place to start.
He is a 21 overall ranked prospect for the Brewers in their system, an infielder, and they also received Nick Fortes from the Marlins. The Marlins would go on to receive the Rays number 28 overall prospect, Matthew Etzel. Starting here, of course, with the main piece, the Brewers, a team that everybody thought was just going to sit around and be quiet, going to grab Danny Jansen to bolster their catching combo.
I looked at this. I partially looked at this as the Rays saying, we're not picking up his club option. His mutual option. So we're going to send him somewhere that we can get something back. And we're going to get back an infield prospect that's young, that we're going to hope to turn into something and is going to fit within our organization with the way that we roll, which I think he fits in tremendously with the style of player that they have. And then they said, okay, great. Now that we've moved him, now let's get something that's a little bit more controllable. So then you go over to the Marlins, you say, hey, Marlins, we have somebody to give you, our number 24th overall prospect in a really good outfielder who's maybe been around a little bit longer, but is still a very good player. And you're going to give us back Nick Fortes. So we're going to re-shore up our catching, but we're going to do it with a better defensive catcher, a guy who puts together a very similar offensive structure, and in doing so, you swap prospects, an outfielder for an infielder, and you get a younger guy who you now have more control over timeline-wise to get to where you want to get to, especially since you have a plethora of outfield prospects and less so of infield prospects. I love what the Rays did today.
Yeah, I think this is a great move for him. I think it quote-unquote confuse some people, but you got to go back to the roster construction and the way the contract works. They feel like right now, like Nick Fortes is not necessarily a huge overall downgrade to their catching duo. They're still competing. Arenamo, which again I'm hoping I'm saying right, fits their overall style of play. They're not afraid of guys who are a little bit slight of frame, who have good speed, who have good skills in the infield and on defense, and just put the ball in play at a heavy rate. He has had some chase rate concerns this year at the high A level. However, we're talking about a guy who's 21 and is in an organization that has proven they are okay with contact first ball players. At the high A level, he's slashed 297, 355, 463, 109 hits, 24 doubles, 11 home runs, 51 RBIs this season. He's also up to 15 stolen bases, and last year stole 32. Nice little get, in my opinion, for Danny Jansen. Then you combo that with moving your 28th overall prospect to go get Nick Fortes to kind of fill the hole of which was Danny Jansen. It's a guy that, with 5 years of Major League service time, they might think that if he fits well in the organization, he's a long-term number 2 catcher for them. That's not out of the question. We're talking about a guy who, by all defensive metrics, has been better than Jansen, who's not a poor defensive catcher for the most part in his career, a 3.4 frame rate and a 6 defensive runs saved in 2025 for Fortes.
Can I ask you a question? And you may not have
Ask
the
me a
answer to
question.
this. Does the club side of Danny Jansen's option now go to the Brewers?
We should know the answer to that, and I'm going to tell you that it does, but I'm going to say that non-definitively.
Okay.
I believe because they take over the contract when he is traded for, they do take over the contract in his language.
But
So
I know the Rays are
it's good
paying,
notes.
But I know the Rays are paying some of
This-
the rest of this year's contract.
this year, but not next year. It'll be interesting to see. I do believe that the Brewers will have the ability to decide what happens with that club option. But we're going to get back to you guys as the viewers next week and tell you whether or not we were right or wrong. Flax, the last piece in this move, and that was the Marlins just sneaking in with moving Fortes and being willing to, is they receive a guy who was a 10th round pick by Baltimore out of Texas A&M, 22-year-old Matthew Etzel. He was an outfielder and the Rays' number 28 prospect, above average speed, plays solid corner outfield, a guy who stole 45 bases in 2024. He struggled a little bit this year, but he's the type of guy who has a 4th outfielder ceiling, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with grabbing that for a backup catcher.
Yeah, Peter Bendix went and got another Mike Elias outfield prospect.
Yeah, the last one went pretty well for him.
Yeah, Peter Bendix knows what he's looking for, I guess. But yeah, no, interesting pickup. Interesting the way that whole thing shook out. Again, like I said, I like it for the Rays. For everyone out there who thinks that the Rays are penny pinching, they're paying Danny Jansen's contract to not be on their team. That's not penny pinching. That is moving yourself in a direction that you think is better for your long term. And I think that the Rays are a little bit more out in front of what they're trying to do. And I think if you haven't been watching them the last 7 years do this consistently in their front office and try and make decisions that are trying to benefit their long-term standing as being competitive and not do the up and down hills and valleys of a lot of what mid-market teams do, then you're not paying attention, because this is not new. And I like where the Rays are headed.
I agree. And guys, that's a dude who roots for a different AL East team saying that out loud. So you know he's got to like what their roster construction is rolling over there. Yeah. This year you are. All right, let's now that I've gotten my dig in, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Flax.
Yes.
I can go first if you'd like, but if you've got it, give me
got
one name. Give me one name who will still be on their roster that everybody is expecting to be traded after July 31st.
Mitch Keller.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, Mitch Keller will have to net the return of a 3.5 year control. Not to mention, in his 6 outings before the break, he posted a 1.96 ERA, 24 hits, 7 walks over 36 and 2/3 innings. Posted a 3.48 in 20 starts before the break. He's throwing a lot of innings. He's got a lot of control. He's throwing a lot of strikes. I'm sure a lot of teams want him. I know a lot of teams can afford him, but the Pirates know their value. The Pirates are not going to just give him away for peanuts, especially with how much he's worth and how long-term it is, because they could just let him continue pitching and getting better and give him away next year for marginally less, because he'll be 30 next year and not 29. So that's why I don't think Mitch Keller's going anywhere. I don't think they're gonna get the offers that they want for him, and so I think he'll stick around. Unless this ends up being like last year's trade deadline where people threw gross offers at the table. I just don't think it's happening.
I like it. I do think Mitch Keller costs a lot more than everybody seems to think, especially on the fact that he's played so well over the last X amount of games through the All-Star break. I'm going with my hometown guy here, Mackenzie Gore. You know what I've been saying over the last couple of weeks. Really tired of people just like expecting him to get traded. I think the bigger issue I have with it is not the thought process of moving Mackenzie Gore. I think it's, as Nationals fans, we've fallen into this pattern of expectation that we just will never sign anybody. And listen, I find myself in that same pattern and thought process as well. But we're talking about a guy who has improved every single year since he's come up to the big league level. He looks like he has the ability to be a number one in a rotation, and we've got him for another 2.5 years, right? I just don't believe we are going to get the type of offer needed to move him, right? If the King's ransom comes, take the King's ransom. I'm not fighting it. Somebody had the audacity to say that the Tigers were going to give both Max Keller and Kevin McGonigal. Guess what? I love you, Mackenzie Gore. I will drive you to Detroit for that package. I don't mean that poorly. But I don't think the Nationals are going to see that package. So it's hard for me to believe it makes sense to move him. And I would just simply say, Lerners, maybe just give him a check and Wood while you're at it. And let's move on. So there you go. That's our thoughts. Uncandid as always. Yeah, I don't know. Flax, a lot of fun coming to the trade deadline. Guys, there's going to be a lot of content coming from us all over socials. Really hoping you guys hang with us on X, which is where you will see most of our content going out for the trade deadline. Of course, find us on all of your favorite listening platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever it might be. But past that, as always, we're Baseball Unstitched. And Flax, unless you've got anything else,
No,
have a great week.